We wish you were never born. That's what my own mother said to me on one of the most important nights of my life, my college graduation dinner. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a slip of the tongue fueled by too much wine. It was a cold, calculated statement delivered across a linen-covered table in a supposedly celebratory atmosphere, and the words sliced through me like a shard of ice. My whole family, my father, my younger sister, even my usually stoic grandfather, all watched, their faces frozen in a mixture of horror and agreement. I stood up from the table, every eye in the expensive restaurant turning towards us, and I did the only thing I could think of, the one thing nobody, least of all them, expected me to do. But was I wrong for taking the nuclear option? Was I wrong for turning that night of supposed triumph into a brutal, final reckoning? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing. To truly understand why those 6 words weren't just cruel, but the final stroke in a lifetime of emotional abuse, you have to go back to the beginning, or at least, the beginning of my life. I was always the inconvenient child, the one who didn't fit the mold my parents had meticulously crafted for their ideal family. My younger sister, Sarah, was the golden child. She was everything my parents valued, naturally gifted in academics, effortlessly charming, and, most importantly, completely compliant. I, on the other hand, was artistic, introspective, and, in their eyes, perpetually difficult. From the moment I could form memories, the comparison game began. My report cards were never good enough, my hobbies were a waste of time, and my aspirations to study literature and writing were openly ridiculed as a path to guaranteed poverty. My parents are highly successful in finance, a world of sharp suits and even sharper spreadsheets, and they viewed my passion as an embarrassing indulgence. My mother, especially, took my existence as a personal failure. Every achievement of Sarah's was a grand spectacle, celebrated with expensive trips and public boasts. My achievements, like winning a regional writing competition or getting accepted into my dream university, were met with a dismissive nod or, worse, a sigh and a lament about how much more successful I could have been if I had only chosen a practical major. The worst of it was the constant, subtle sabotage. They'd forget to pay my tuition installment, forcing me to scramble to find the funds, or they would openly discuss cutting off my financial support in front of me, claiming I was ungrateful for the little they did provide. It was a strategy designed to keep me perpetually insecure and dependent, a tactic that made me feel like I was always walking on emotional eggshells. Yet I persisted. I worked 2 jobs throughout college, took out loans I desperately needed to avoid asking them for help, and I poured every ounce of my frustration and determination into my studies. I thrived not because of them, but entirely in spite of them. Graduation day finally arrived, and I was filled with a dizzying mix of elation and dread. Elation for the achievement, dread because I had to spend the evening with them. The graduation ceremony itself was perfect. I even managed to find my grandfather in the crowd, the only person in my family who had ever offered me a genuine word of encouragement. He's an old school gentleman, a man of few words, but his quiet pride meant the world to me. My parents and Sarah, however, were conspicuously absent from the post-ceremony celebration with my friends, having more important things to do, which I knew meant prepping for the dinner they insisted on hosting. The dinner was set for that night at the city's most exclusive steakhouse, a place so quiet the clinking of silver where felt like a gunshot. It was supposed to be my night, but it quickly became another stage for their usual performance. My mother started it, of course. She began by praising Sarah's foresight for choosing a business degree and securing an immediate job at a prestigious firm. A job she secured while still an undergraduate, and a job that conveniently overshadowed my own accomplishment. Then, my father chimed in with a passive-aggressive remark about how now that I was finished with my expensive hobby, I needed to get serious and start paying them back for the loans they had ostensibly provided, even though I knew the majority of the cost had come from my own sweat and struggle. The air grew thick with tension, and my grandfather tried a feeble attempt to steer the conversation, saying he was proud of my persistence. But my mother wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her smile thin and venomous, and dropped the bomb. She didn't just criticize my choices or me as a person this time. She went straight for the jugular, reaching into the deepest, darkest part of a child's insecurity and ripping it out for all to see. She stared me down, her eyes cold as flint, and delivered those 6 shattering words, "We wish you were never born." My father nodded once, a quick, almost imperceptible movement, confirming the sentiment. Sarah avoided my eyes, picking at her food. That was the moment, the culmination of 22 years of feeling like a mistake, a burden, and a disappointment. The rage was immediate and white, hot, but something else took over too, a profound, almost frightening calm. I knew I had a choice to make, a fork in the road of my life. I could do what I always did, choke back the pain, say nothing, and let the cycle of abuse continue. Or I could break it, here and now, in the most spectacular and public way possible. So that's the situation I was in. The culmination of a lifetime of being told I was unwanted, delivered as a toast on the night that was supposed to represent my personal freedom. I had the degree, I had the job offer I hadn't told them about, and now I had the definitive proof of their disdain, given freely and openly. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have walked out silently and cut them off? Or would you have fought back? Take a moment, because what I did next changed everything for me and for them forever. I took a breath that felt like it sucked all the oxygen out of the room. My hand went to my pocket, where I carried a small, sealed envelope. It wasn't planned for this moment, but the timing, I realized, was perfect. I stood up slowly, making sure I had everyone's attention. "That's an incredibly honest statement, Mother," I said, my voice steady and unnervingly quiet, which made everyone at the table lean in. "And I'm glad you finally said it out loud, because I feel the same way. You've been trying to erase me from your lives for years, and tonight, I'm making it easier for you." I reached into my bag and pulled out a second, much larger envelope. I slid it across the table toward my father, whose jaw was starting to unhinge. "This is a cashier's check for every single penny you have ever claimed to spend on me, from kindergarten tuition to this pathetic dinner," I announced, loud enough for a few nearby tables to hear. "I spent the last 6 months going through every bank statement and receipt I could find, calculating every loan, every gift, and every expense you've ever held over my head, and I added a generous amount for emotional distress. Consider us financially square. You are officially no longer my creditors." The total on the check was an absurdly large 5-figure sum, the vast majority of my college savings, but the look on my father's face was priceless. Before he could speak, I continued, my gaze locking on my mother. "And as for your wish, Mother, that I was never born," I took the smaller envelope from my pocket and slapped it onto the table in front of her. "That is a copy of a formal, notarized legal document. Effective immediately, I have legally changed my name. I've taken the surname of my grandfather, with his permission, and I've legally dropped yours. The paperwork is finalized, and my new Social Security card, driver's license, and bank accounts are all updated. I am no longer your child, legally or otherwise. The family you so wish I wasn't a part of no longer includes me. I glanced around the table, taking in the shock. Sarah had tears in her eyes, not of sadness for me, but of pure terror at the disruption. My father was clutching the check, his face pale with a mix of greed and disbelief. My mother's expression had fractured. The veneer of icy control was gone, replaced by genuine, panicked distress. I leaned in one last time. You spent my entire life trying to make me feel like I was nobody, a financial and emotional drain. Well, tonight, I've cashed out, and I've resigned from your family. My name is no longer yours to dishonor, and my success will no longer be something you can claim credit for. I will be starting my job next week, at a publication you both openly mocked, and I will be just fine. Goodbye. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't even look back at my grandfather, though I gave a slight nod in his direction. I turned and walked out of that opulent restaurant, leaving the check, the name change document, and a lifetime of emotional baggage on the table behind me. The silence that followed me as I left was the most powerful sound I have ever heard. The aftermath was exactly what you would expect from narcissists who'd just lost their primary target and, let's be honest, a significant amount of money. Initially, it was a flurry of angry, demanding emails from my father, attempting to argue that the check wasn't enough, that the name change was ridiculous, and that I was destroying the family. I didn't respond to a single one. Then came the phone calls, blocked immediately. My mother tried to use Sarah as a go-between, sending manipulative messages about how much she was hurting. But Sarah, sensing my resolve and perhaps realizing the depth of her parents' cruelty, eventually backed off. My grandfather, however, sought me out. A week later, he arrived at my new apartment with a beautiful antique fountain pen and a quiet, supportive hug. He told me he was proud of my courage and that I had done the right thing. He's the only member of that side of the family I still speak to, and our bond is stronger than ever. The check, I later confirmed through a family lawyer, was cashed almost immediately, proving their priorities. The name change stuck, and it truly felt like a final shedding of a skin I never wanted to wear. I started my new job. I paid off the small remaining student loans that were truly mine, and I began the arduous but necessary process of emotional healing. The best revenge wasn't the dramatic exit or the check. It was the profound peace I found in knowing I was finally free. My life now is mine, completely and unequivocally, and I am thriving in a way I never could have when shackled by their expectations and cruelty. That night, I realized that sometimes the ultimate act of self-love is the complete, uncompromising removal of toxic people, even when those people are your parents. The truth is, while those 6 words, "We wish you were never born," were the most painful things I've ever heard, they were also the gift that finally set me free. They gave me the permission, the undeniable justification, to choose myself. I shed the identity of the family scapegoat and stepped into the life of the person I was always meant to be. It was a brutal choice, a public execution of a relationship, but it was the only way to save my soul and secure my future happiness. I've learned that cutting ties is not an act of hate. It is often the clearest act of self-preservation. I am happier, healthier, and more successful now than I ever was under their oppressive roof, and I don't regret a single thing I did. I look at my new name, a name I chose and earned, and I see a future entirely defined by my own efforts and my own worth. Like this video, if you were on my side and believe I made the right choice by finally walking away and changing my name. Subscribe for more stories like this And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.